I walked into my apartment at 2 in the morning and there she was. My fiancée, sitting on the couch wearing my best friend's hoodie. Hair messy. Eyes half shut like she'd just woken up, except she wasn't sleeping in our bedroom, she was here. In the living room, with him. And trust me, I'm not the jealous type. But something in the way she looked at me, calm, almost like she was daring me to ask, made my stomach twist. Not gonna lie, my brain just froze. This was just a few hours after her bachelorette party. The one I had paid for. The one I had told her, go have fun. You deserve it. And in that moment, standing in the doorway, I realized I had just stepped into a scene that would change everything. But before I tell you exactly what I saw, and what I heard, you need to understand how we even got here. Because if you knew us before this, you'd think we were the last people this could happen to. Truth is, we'd been together for 3 years. And for most of that time, she was my whole world. Her name's Emily. And we met in the least romantic way possible. Waiting in line at the DMV. Yeah, not exactly a Hollywood meet cute. But somehow, between bad coffee and the frustration of government paperwork, we started talking. She was funny, sharp, and she had this way of making you feel like you were the only person in the room. We started dating a week later. And I swear, those first months felt like I'd hit the jackpot. And then there's Mark, my best friend since college. We met in freshman year when we both got stuck in the same broken elevator for 3 hours. He was the guy who'd help you move without asking for beer or pizza. The guy who'd bail you out of trouble without asking why. He was also the guy the first trusted with everything, including my relationship. That might have been my first mistake. Emily and Mark got along great. Too great sometimes. But I told myself that was a good thing. I mean, who doesn't want their best friend and their fiancé to be friends? Every time they'd joke around or share inside jokes, I'd just laugh along, thinking it was harmless. But looking back, there were moments, tiny ones, that should have made me think twice. Like that night we all went out for drinks and I came back from the bathroom to find them sitting way too close at the bar. Or the time she mentioned how, Mark's the only guy who really gets my sense of humor. I brushed it off. That's what you do when you trust people. Right? You give them the benefit of the doubt. Fast forward to a month before the wedding. Emily starts talking about her bachelorette party. She wanted it to be big. One last wild night, she said, grinning. I didn't think much of it. I even offered to cover the costs so she and her friends could really enjoy themselves. She told me they'd be going to this upscale bar downtown. Maybe a few clubs after. The night of the party. She kissed me goodbye, told me she loved me, and left in a whirlwind of perfume and laughter. I figured she'd be out late. Maybe crash at her maid of honor's place. I wasn't worried. Around midnight, I got a text from Mark. Just a, hey man. You up? I thought it was weird. He knew I usually slept early, but I didn't reply. An hour later, I couldn't sleep, so I decided to go grab my laptop from the office to do some work. On the way back, something made me drive past my own apartment instead of heading straight home. Call it instinct, call it fate, but I saw Mark's car parked right outside. And that's when my chest tightened. I remember sitting in my car, just staring at it, telling myself there had to be a normal explanation. Maybe he was dropping something off. Maybe Emily had called him for help. But then I saw the lights on inside. And, I don't know, man, something in me just knew. I walked up, unlocked the door, and, well, you already know what I saw. But what you don't know is the way Mark looked at me. Like a kid caught stealing candy but too proud to admit it. Emily didn't even look surprised. She just leaned back, smirked, and said, "You're home early." My hands were shaking, my voice caught in my throat. I wanted to yell, to demand answers, but instead, I just stood there, heart pounding, trying to piece together how the woman I was supposed to marry, and the guy the first called my brother, ended up like this in my living room. And here's the thing, what they told me next? That's the part that made me wish I had never walked through that door. I just stood there, like my brain was buffering, trying to load some explanation that would make this make sense. Emily crossed her legs slowly, like she had all the time in the world, and Mark ran a hand through his hair, avoiding my eyes. It's not what it looks like, he said, which, let's be honest, is exactly what people say when it's exactly what it looks like. I didn't say anything, I just stared at them, stared and waited. Emily sighed, like she was annoyed I wasn't making this easy for her. We were just talking, she said, but her voice had that edge. The one she used when she thought I was overreacting. Talking, I repeated, my tone flat. At 2 in the morning. After your bachelorette party. In my apartment. While wearing his hoodie. She didn't flinch. She actually leaned forward and said, "You're being paranoid." And I swear, something in me cracked right there. Because paranoid means you're imagining things, and I was looking right at them. "So where were you supposed to be tonight?" I asked, my voice low. She said she'd gone to the bar with the girls. Then they ran into Mark and some of his buddies. They decided to keep the party going at our place because it was closer. Only, there were no other people here. Just the two of them. I looked at Mark and asked, "So, where'd everyone else go?" He hesitated, his mouth opening and closing like he was rehearsing a lie in real time. "They, left earlier," he said. I took a step closer. And that's when I caught it, a faint smell of her perfume mixed with his cologne. But underneath, something else, something I'd smelled before, and not in any innocent context. My stomach turned. I asked her straight up, "Did you sleep with him?" Silence. Mark shifted uncomfortably. Emily looked me dead in the eye and said, "It was a mistake." And there it was. Not a denial. Not even an attempt to soften it. Just an admission wrapped in the word, mistake. Like that somehow made it less of a betrayal. I felt this heat rising in my chest. But my voice stayed cold. "When?" I asked. "Tonight," she said, almost casually. "After the club. We were drunk. And it just happened." She actually shrugged, like she was talking about spilling wine on a tablecloth. Mark muttered something about not meaning to hurt me, which was laughable because if you don't want to hurt someone, you don't end up in bed with their fiancé. I asked them both, how long? Because a part of me needed to know if this was a one-time thing or if I'd been living in a lie for months. Emily swore it was just tonight. But Mark's eyes flickered in that way that told me there was more. And here's the part that still gets me, she didn't cry. Didn't apologize like she meant it. She just kept talking about how these things happen, and how I shouldn't throw everything away over one mistake. I laughed. I couldn't help it. Because to her, this was just one night, but to me, it was every promise we'd made shattered in an instant. I asked her, "If I had done this to you, with one of your friends, would you be this calm right now?" She didn't answer. Mark finally spoke up, saying maybe it was better if he left so we could talk. But before he could move, I said, "You're not going anywhere, not until I hear everything." That's when the real cracks started to show. Emily got defensive, accusing me of interrogating her like she was some criminal. Mark kept saying, "It didn't mean anything," which is the cheapest excuse in the book. And then, this part I'll never forget, Emily said, "If you'd been more fun lately, maybe I wouldn't have needed this." My hands clenched so tight I thought my nails would cut into my palms. That one sentence turned my hurt into something sharper. Something dangerous. I told her I'd been working extra hours to pay for our wedding. For our honeymoon. For the house we'd been dreaming about, while she was out here, meeting my best friend. The room went quiet. The only sound was the hum of the fridge. And then Mark, in this weak little voice, said, "Man, I think I should go." I let him stand up. But I followed him to the door. "You're dead to me," I said, and I meant every syllable. He didn't even try to defend himself. He just left, head down. When I turned back, Emily was still on the couch, arms crossed, like she was the one who'd been wronged. "So what now?" she asked, as if this was some small fight we could patch up. I told her I didn't know yet, but I needed her out of the apartment by morning. She smirked and said, "Good luck finding someone who'll put up with you." And that was the moment I knew there was no going back. But what I didn't know yet, what I was about to find out, was that this night wasn't the first time they'd crossed the line, and it wasn't going to be the last time I'd had to deal with them together. The thing about betrayal is, it doesn't just end the night you find out. It lingers, seeps into every thought, every memory, until you start questioning everything you thought was real. That night, after Mark left and Emily finally went to bed, our bed, which I couldn't even look at without feeling sick, I sat in the kitchen, staring at the dark, just replaying every moment of the last 3 years. And the more I thought about it, the more little moments came back, things I had brushed off. Things that suddenly didn't seem so harmless. Like last summer, when I had to go on a work trip for a week and Emily kept saying how Mark was such a lifesaver, helping her move a few boxes. Or the time she came home late from a girls' night, and her phone battery was mysteriously dead. So I couldn't reach her. Back then, I trusted her. I trusted both of them. Now, I wasn't so sure. Around 4 a.m., I grabbed my phone and started scrolling through her social media. Nothing obvious, she was too smart for that. But when I opened her private photo album on the shared cloud, something we set up for wedding planning, I saw something that made my chest tighten. There were pictures from nights out, nights I wasn't there, and in the background, almost hidden, was Mark. Not once, not twice, but in at least 4 different events she'd never mentioned he attended. And in one of them, taken months ago, they were sitting side by side at a bar, her hand on his thigh, both of them smiling like they were in on some private joke. My hands were shaking, but I kept scrolling, and that's when I found the video. It wasn't anything explicit, at least. Not by accident, but it was enough. She was in a hotel room, laughing, holding the camera up, and you could hear Mark's voice in the background saying, "Come back to bed." The date stamp? 8 months ago. I swear my blood went cold. This wasn't just a drunken one-time thing after her bachelorette. This had been going on for almost a year. Suddenly, everything made sense. The inside jokes. The way they texted each other more than they texted me. The subtle shift in her attitude toward me. Like she was already halfway out the door but didn't want to lose the security of the relationship until she had something better. And the worst part? I realized everyone else probably knew except me. I thought about my friends. The way some of them had been acting weird around me lately. The awkward silences when Emily and Mark were in the same room. How many of them had seen this coming? How many of them had kept their mouths shut? By the time the sun came up, I knew I couldn't just let this slide. I wasn't going to be the guy who got cheated on and then quietly disappeared from his own life. No, I needed to make sure they both knew exactly what they'd thrown away, and that everyone else knew it too. So, I waited until Emily got up, walking into the kitchen like nothing happened, making coffee like we were still engaged. I told her I knew it wasn't just that night. At first, she tried to play dumb, saying, "What are you talking about?" But when I showed her the pictures and the video, her face changed. She didn't cry, didn't beg, she just shrugged. "Fine, so what? It's been going on for a while. I was going to tell you eventually." I laughed in disbelief. Eventually? When? After the wedding? She had the nerve to say. "Maybe. You wouldn't have taken it so hard if we were already married." That was it. I told her to pack her things and get out by the end of the day. She rolled her eyes, said she'd leave when she was ready. That I couldn't just kick her out of the apartment because she'd been paying for some of the furniture. That's when I told her I'd already changed the locks while she was asleep. She froze, coffee cup halfway to her lips, realizing I wasn't bluffing. Then she tried to spin it, saying I was overreacting, that people cheat all the time, and it doesn't have to mean the end. And maybe that's true for some people, but not for me, not with her, not with my best friend. She left in a huff, slamming the door so hard a picture frame fell off the wall. I sat there in the silence afterward, thinking that was it, that I'd never have to see her again. But I was wrong, because 2 days later, I got a text from Mark. No apology, no explanation, just, "We should talk." And that's when I realized, this wasn't over. Not by a long shot. When I saw Mark's text, "We should talk," I just stared at it for a good minute, wondering if he actually thought we could sit down over coffee and somehow fix this. I didn't reply right away. I wanted him to sweat. A part of me wanted to ignore him completely. But another part, the part that still remembered all those years we'd been friends, wanted to look him in the eye and make sure he understood exactly what he'd done. So, I told him to meet me at the diner near my work. Neutral ground, public place, no chance of me doing something I'd regret. He showed up late, of course. Like I was the one who should be waiting on him. Same old Mark, confident, casual, like nothing could touch him. He slid into the booth, gave me this half smile, and said, "Man, I know you're pissed, but..." I cut him off right there. Pissed doesn't even scratch the surface. He tried to launch into some sob story about how he and Emily had feelings they didn't expect. How it just happened the first time, and how they didn't mean for it to hurt me. I let him talk for a bit. Not because I cared about his excuses, but because I wanted to see if he'd admit the truth, that it had been going on for months. And sure enough, after a few minutes of dancing around it, he admitted it. "Yeah, we hooked up before, but it was never serious," he said, like that was supposed to make it better. I leaned in, keeping my voice low. "You were my best friend. You were supposed to be my best man. And you were sleeping with my fiancé behind my back. He didn't even apologize. Instead, he said, look, maybe it's for the best. You and Emily, you weren't happy. And she and we just click. I laughed, not because it was funny, but because it was so ridiculous that he thought this was some romantic twist instead of straight up betrayal. You think this ends with you two riding off into the sunset? I asked. No, Mark. This ends with both of you realizing exactly what you lost. He frowned, probably for the first time realizing I wasn't going to just fade out of the picture quietly. I paid for my coffee, stood up, and left him sitting there, looking confused. That night, I started going through everything, old messages, photos, social media posts. I found screenshots worth keeping, proof of exactly what they'd been doing and when. And as I gathered it all, an idea started forming. I wasn't just going to block them and move on. I was going to make sure the people who mattered, their friends, their families, knew the truth. The next day, I reached out to Emily's maid of honor. She'd always been cool with me, and I had a feeling she didn't approve of what Emily had done. Turns out, I was right. She told me she'd suspected something between Emily and Mark for a while but didn't have proof. When I sent her the pictures and the video, she said one word, damn. Then she asked if I wanted her help. Oh, I did. We came up with a plan. Emily's parents were hosting an engagement brunch that weekend, something I had already RSVP'd to before everything blew up. I told the maid of honor I was still going to show up, but not alone. And not empty-handed. On the day of the brunch, I walked in with a manila envelope under my arm. Emily was there, looking surprised to see me. Mark right beside her like he belonged there. They both froze when they saw the envelope. I waited until everyone had a glass of champagne. Then I stood up and said, before we toast, I think it's only fair that everyone here knows exactly who they're toasting to. The room went quiet. I pulled the photos and the video from the envelope and laid them out on the table for everyone to see. Gasps, murmurs, Emily's mom covering her mouth, Mark's face going pale. Emily tried to grab the pictures, but I held them up. This is the woman I was supposed to marry, I said, my voice steady. And this is the man who was supposed to stand beside me as my best man. No yelling, no theatrics, just the truth, laid bare in front of the people they wanted to impress most. Emily's dad stood up, told me I'd made my point, and asked me to leave. I smiled, wished them all a pleasant meal, and walked out into the sunlight feeling lighter than I had in weeks. But here's the thing, revenge doesn't always end in one act. Sometimes, the fallout keeps spreading on its own. And I had no idea just how far this was going to go. The thing about dropping a truth bomb like that in front of family is, you can't control the explosion. By the time I got home from the engagement brunch, my phone was blowing up, texts from mutual friends, a couple of calls from numbers I didn't recognize, and one voicemail from Emily that I didn't even bother listening to. But the real chaos? That started online. Someone at the brunch had recorded my little presentation and posted it to a private friends group. From there, it spread faster than I could have imagined. Within 2 days, everyone in our circle knew exactly what Emily and Mark had been up to. People I hadn't spoken to in years were messaging me like, man, I can't believe they did you like that. And here's the kicker, apparently. Emily's boss was in that group. She worked in PR, where image is everything. Let's just say the optics of being caught cheating on your fiancé with his best friend were not the kind of publicity her company wanted. Word got back to me that she'd been asked to take some time off, which we both knew was code for, we're finding a way to get rid of you without saying it outright. As for Mark, turns out he'd been dating someone on and off before this whole thing. And she found out the same way everyone else did. She dumped him publicly, yeah. Full breakup post with screenshots, so now his reputation was toast too. I didn't plan any of that part. But I'm not gonna lie, watching it unfold was like watching dominoes fall exactly the way you hoped they would. A week later, I was at my favorite bar, having a drink with a buddy who'd stuck by me through all this. When Mark walked in, he spotted me, hesitated, then came over. I thought maybe he was gonna try apologizing again. But no, he asked me to stop talking about it, because it was hurting his chances of moving on. I just stared at him and said, you didn't think about my chances of moving on when you were sleeping with my fiancé. He left after that, probably realizing he was never going to get the clean slate he wanted. Emily, on the other hand, tried the Let's meet and talk things through. Angle. I agreed, at a coffee shop. Broad daylight. Public space. She started off with the usual, we made a mistake. We didn't mean to hurt you. Can't we just be adults about this? I let her talk, sipping my coffee. And when she was done, I said, we are being adults. I'm telling you to stay out of my life. And you're gonna respect that. She didn't like that answer. But she didn't have much choice. She left, probably thinking she'd find some way to spin this in her favor. But here's the truth. Once you show people who you are, you can't unshow it. Fast forward a couple months, and I'm in a much better place. Got my own apartment, started dating again, not rushing anything. Just enjoying life without wondering who's lying to my face. Mark, last I heard, he moved to another city. Probably hoping to outrun his own reputation. Emily? She's still around, but in a different circle now. One where nobody really trusts her. Sometimes I wonder if they ended up together after all that. But honestly, I don't care. They deserve each other. And me? I'm just glad I didn't walk down that aisle. Because the thing is, betrayal hurts like hell. But it's also a kind of filter. It gets rid of people who never deserved a seat at your table in the first place. Now, when I look back on that night, the one that started with me walking into my own apartment at 2 a.m., I don't see the end of my life. I see the beginning of a better one. But here's the thing. Just when I thought I'd closed that chapter for good, I got an unexpected message from someone I never thought I'd hear from again. And what they told me about Emily and Mark, well, let's just say it made the Bachelorette party look like a warm-up